Every morning, across Australia, roughly 16 million cups of coffee are made before most people have said a word to anyone. That number alone tells you something about how deeply coffee sits inside daily life here. But it also raises a question that most Australians never stop to ask. When you reach for the jar on your kitchen bench, when you buy the same brand you have bought for years without really thinking about it, do you actually know what you are buying? Not just the name, not just the price, but what is in it, how it was made, where the beans came from, and whether the claims printed on the label mean what you instinctively assume they mean. Australia did not just adopt coffee as a habit, it built a genuine culture around it. The flat white was invented here. The expectation that a barista knows their craft, that beans have a traceable origin, that the cup you pay for reflects real skill and real ingredients. These are not niche concerns in this country. They are the baseline against which everything else is measured, and that baseline is exactly what makes the instant coffee aisle at Coles and Woolworths such a revealing place to spend a few quiet minutes reading labels. Because the brands that dominate that aisle, the ones that fill millions of trolleys every week, are not all doing what their packaging implies. This investigation looked at 6 of the most widely available coffee products in Australian supermarkets right now. What emerged was not a story about scandal. It was a story about information, about what the label tells you, what it carefully avoids telling you, and what that gap means for every Australian who drinks one of these products every single day. The first brand is International Roast, made by Nestlé. If you have ever worked in a school staff room, sat in a hospital waiting room, or spent time on a construction site, you have almost certainly seen the tin. It is one of the most immediately recognizable containers in Australian retail. An institutional format tin that has occupied workplace kitchens and budget supermarket shelves for decades. Its position in the market is clear. This is the cheapest option available, priced for volume, positioned for settings where coffee is provided rather than chosen. Here is what the tin does not tell you. International Roast is produced using a spray drying process. That distinction matters far more than most casual coffee drinkers realize. Spray drying involves taking brewed liquid coffee concentrate and forcing it through an atomizer into a chamber of very hot, dry air. The water evaporates almost instantly, leaving behind a fine powder. It is fast, it is efficient, and it is cost-effective at industrial scale. What it is not is good at preserving the volatile aromatic compounds responsible for the flavor and aroma that define a quality cup. Freeze-drying, the method used in higher-grade instant coffees, works differently. The brewed coffee is frozen solid, then placed into a vacuum chamber where the ice converts directly to vapor without passing through a liquid phase. Significantly more of the aromatic compounds survive that process intact. The difference in the resulting cup is structural, built into the production method from the start. Beyond production method, the tin offers no information about bean origin. There is no country listed, no variety named, no sourcing standard referenced. Consumer reviews on Australian platforms tell a consistent story. Long-term buyers describing a change in flavor they date to a specific point, using words like burnt, bitter, and granular. Nestlé has not publicly addressed those complaints with any meaningful specificity. The familiarity of the packaging is doing significant work that the product information is not. The second brand is Nescafé Blend 43 Dark, also made by Nestlé. This is part of the dominant instant coffee range in Australia by volume, a product so embedded in the national pantry that many Australians would struggle to remember a time before it existed. In Choice's independent blind taste testing of 18 supermarket instant coffees, conducted by a professional panel against a reference long black made on an espresso machine with freshly ground premium beans, Blend 43 Dark scored 71 out of 100. That placed it in the lower third of the entire field. The packaging carries a sustainability claim, with language describing the beans as 100% sustainably sourced or responsibly grown. When Choice questioned Nestlé directly about that claim, the company explained that most beans used in Australian-made Blend 43 are certified through Rainforest Alliance, or the 4C standard. The 4C standard is a baseline sustainability framework that coffee industry participants helped design and that Nestlé has been involved in shaping. It is not the same as an independently set certification standard administered by a body with no commercial relationship to the brand being assessed. The auditing behind the claim is real. The independence of the standard is structurally different from what most shoppers assume when they read the word sustainable on a food label. The packaging also does not disclose country of bean origin, varietals used, or the ratio of Arabica to Robusta in the blend. For a product this widely consumed, that level of opacity about what is actually in the jar is a gap worth naming. The third brand is Nescafé Gold Intense Dark, again from Nestlé. This product sits in the premium tier of the Nescafé range, carrying a higher price point and packaging designed to communicate quality above the standard Blend 43 offering. In the same choice blind taste test, Nescafé Gold Intense scored 76 out of 100 at $7.50 per 100 grams. It is priced as a step up from the everyday option. The problem with that positioning becomes visible when you look at what the same money buys elsewhere on the same shelf. Coles Classic Granulated Coffee scored 80 out of 100 in that identical test and costs $1.85 per 100 grams. Robert Tim's Full-Bodied Granulated Coffee scored 81 out of 100 at $4 per 100 grams. Aldi's Al Cafe Gold Classic Dark Roast scored 79 out of 100 at $3.90 per 100 grams. Every one of those products outperformed Nescafé Gold Intense in independent taste assessment and did so at a meaningfully lower price per gram. The label does not disclose bean origin, does not name varietals, and does not provide information about the blend composition beyond the general flavor descriptor in the product name. The independent taste data does not suggest you are paying for a better cup. The fourth brand is Moccona Specialty Blend, Rich and Dark, owned by JDE Peet's. In Australia, Moccona built its entire identity around a single piece of packaging, the cylindrical glass jar, with the gold label and the red wax seal. That jar became so recognizable over decades that it functioned as shorthand for the idea of premium instant coffee in the Australian consumer mind. The brand arrived here in 1960 and spent the following 60 years accumulating the kind of quiet prestige that very few packaged goods achieve. In the choice blind taste test, Moccona Specialty Blend Rich and Dark scored 75 out of 100 at $8.50 per 100 grams, placing it below products costing a fraction of its price per gram. What Australian consumers have documented with considerable consistency across product review platforms is a change in the product itself. Reviews describe the flavor using words like bland, dishwater, and burnt rubber in a cup. Moccona has not addressed these complaints publicly with any specificity. What is documented with precision is the price trajectory. A 200-gram jar available for around $12 several years ago now regularly sits above $28 at major Australian supermarkets. The jar looks identical. The label carries the same gold text. None of the factors driving the price increase are communicated to the consumer absorbing it at the checkout. JDE Peet's, which owns Moccona, announced in August 2025 that it had agreed to an acquisition by Keurig Dr Pepper in a transaction valued at approximately $18 billion, expected to complete in 2026. A brand that most Australians experience as a familiar and timeless presence on the shelf is currently in the middle of one of the largest corporate ownership changes in the global coffee industry. That context does not appear anywhere on the jar. The fifth brand is Starbucks Dark Roast Premium Instant, available at Coles and Woolworths. Understanding this product requires some context about the Starbucks story in Australia. The company entered the Australian cafe market in 2000 with considerable confidence, opened stores across major cities, and by 2008 had closed 60 of those locations in a contraction that attracted international attention as a case study in a global brand failing to read a local market. The diagnosis is straightforward. Australia already had a sophisticated cafe culture built on skilled baristas, quality espresso technique, and locally owned independent businesses that had been developing their craft for decades. Starbucks offered nothing that a good local cafe was not already doing better. The brand retreated to airports and tourist-heavy precincts, catering primarily to international visitors rather than Australian coffee drinkers, making a genuine choice. In the Choice Blind Taste Test, Starbucks Dark Roast Premium Instant scored 72 out of 100, placing it among the 3 lowest performing products across the entire 18-product field. At $14.44 per 100 grams. It was simultaneously the most expensive product tested and one of the worst performers on taste. Origin information on Starbucks at home packaging is limited to broad regional descriptors covering multiple countries rather than specific traceable origin details. For a brand explicitly trading on coffee credentials and asking the highest price in the category, that combination of taste performance and label transparency sits far below what the price and the marketing would lead a reasonable consumer to expect. The 6th brand is Nature's Cuppa Organic Coffee Freeze-Dried. The organic claim on this label carries genuine regulatory weight in Australia. For a product to carry organic certification here, the beans must be grown without synthetic pesticides or fertilizers, verified by an accredited independent certification body. That requirement is real, and the certification is externally verified. In the Choice Blind Taste Test, Nature's Cuppa Organic Freeze-Dried scored 69 out of 100. That was the lowest score across all 18 products tested. The reference long black made on an espresso machine from freshly ground premium beans scored 79. Every other product in the test, including budget home brand options at under $2 per 100 grams, scored higher, at $9.70 per 100 grams. Nature's Cuppa is priced above most of the products that outperformed it in the same test. The organic certification commands a premium that the independent taste assessment does not support. The label does not disclose country of bean origin, does not name a producer or cooperative, and does not identify whether the beans are Arabica, Robusta, or a combination. For consumers choosing this product, partly because an organic certification implies something about transparency and traceability, the absence of any information about where these beans came from represents a meaningful gap between the promise of the label and what it actually delivers. What connects these 6 products is not dishonesty in a legal sense. None of them is breaking the rules as they are written. What connects them is something more consistent and more worth understanding. In each case, there is a gap between what the packaging communicates to a shopper in the aisle and what a more considered shopper would want to know before deciding whether the price being charged is justified by what is in the jar. Sometimes that gap is a sustainability claim that uses language implying independence that the underlying standard does not fully provide. Sometimes it is the highest price in the category attached to one of the lowest taste scores in an independent test. Sometimes it is a price that has roughly doubled over a few years with no explanation offered to the people paying it. Australia built a cafe culture that the rest of the world genuinely admires. It was built by people who asked questions about origin, about production method, about what was actually in each cup, and why it cost what it cost. That same standard of careful inquiry is available to anyone standing in a supermarket aisle with a jar in their hand and a few minutes to read what is printed on the outside and see what has been left off.